right, y'all. Today is Wednesday, and you know it's Roy's day in front of the camera and mine behind the camera. And he's going to continue teaching y'all and trying to give you more information on our eating cuisine and low glycemic load. So I'm fixing to turn it over to him, and I'm going to get behind the camera.
All right, welcome back. Thank you, Rose. We want to continue with our discussion of how we can help you better understand the low glycemic cuisine that Rose cooks and why it's healthy and why it works. And we've had, this is the fourth session that we've got. So if you want to understand the difference between low glycemic load on your body or just counting carbs, as some do, you can go back and look at 1, 2, and 3, and you'll pick up a real good understanding of that. So remember, we are not doctors and we're not prescribing to an individual, but in general, what we are showing you comes straight from medical science. In fact, you can find most of it that I am talking about through this series in Why We Get Sick by Dr. Benjamin Bittman, PhD and medical instructor and food scientist. And he's at Brigham University, but he's renowned around the world, and he's called upon around the world to teach this because he's one of the foremost persons in the world that has knowledge of what I'm showing you in this series. So last week, just to quickly review, we showed you the timeline 0 to 4 hours along this line here. We showed you that insulin is... Roxy got excited. So anyway, we're showing you that insulin spikes up this way based on the foods that you're eating. Also, we're talking about high glycemic foods, which are digested in the first part of your small intestines, the first 2 feet, and then to some degree the slower, the medium carbs, the rest of the small intestines, and those are the ones that we're talking about right now. So if you eat a large load of potatoes and ice cream and cake and a sweet drink, all right, for a meal, and it shoots your insulin load up because the carbohydrate load goes straight up. In about 30 minutes, it's through the stomach. Bread will do the same thing. It's through the stomach and in the small intestines. When it goes in there, it's dumped in the bloodstream, and your insulin spikes, and also your fat factory turns on. So now you're making fat to get rid of this sugar in your bloodstream. As time goes on, this begins to drop off. These fast carbs begin to drop off and come down. Now, your slow carbs are still being digested in the rest of the intestines, especially in the large. But your fast carbs start coming down, and right about here, a strange thing happens. And this is just short period, and you're hungry again because high carbs cause you to think that you're hungry as they come down. You're not actually needing food, but it causes a craving right here, which causes you to go to the kitchen and get some Rice Krispies or cookies or a piece of cake or a sugary drink or some peanuts in a sugary drink. And what happens? You shoot your insulin right back up because you don't have to start over here. You've snacked before the next meal, and that snack, since you back up again, turns your fat factory on, and then it starts playing off again. Well, what happens right here? And this happens over and over in some people's lives for 24 hours almost. They need that snack, they go get that snack, sit in front of the TV and eat it. And what does it do? It spikes your insulin, turns your fat factory on, and this cycle just goes on and on and on for years. And so this is a very negative health-destroying cycle in the high glycemic food and high insulin condition of your body. And so just as I was talking about here a few minutes ago, there's some, in this book, you can find the damage that this cycle does to human beings. One of the worst that people are familiar with is diabetes type 2. Okay, what happens? This cycle first creates a condition called insulin resistance. Look it up online or get this book and you'll find out what happens. Now, insulin resistance, you think, well, I've never heard of that. That's because you just aren't aware of it. It's out there. In fact, insulin resistance is caused right now by, in 80% of the adults in the United States, insulin resistance is caused by this cycle. And what is insulin resistance? Well, let me just put it to you this way. Your body has had so much insulin, it begins to just try not to use it, just keeps it out of the cells. It's resistant to the insulin, which causes your body to produce more insulin. So now you've got a insulin cycle. It's destroying your pancreas because you're having to pump so much insulin because you're insulin resistance. But insulin resistance is the pre-diabetes form of damage. So you go to insulin resistance first because of this cycle. Then you go to pre-diabetes like I did. I've been through both of those and I'm no longer in that because of this cuisine that Rose cooks and I eat. And then you go from pre-diabetes to real diabetes as you get older and get more damage. And it's also based on heredity because there's a big difference in the way people react to carbs, how quickly they get diabetes and not. But we're not trying to give you a health course on that. I'm just trying to show you how the high glycemic foods will destroy your health. Inflammation is another one that it caused on me, and also it caused high blood pressure, which, you know, just your weight gaining will do that. But let me just read out some chapters in this book. What is insulin resistance? Number 2, health, heart health. That's the effect this is on your heart. The brain and neurological disorders. Reproductive health, how it affects the reproductive cycle in males and females. Cancer, aging the skin, muscles, and bones. What it does to gastrointestinal and kidney health, which was Rose's problem. If y'all remember the first video, she was given this way of eating because she had suffered for 3 years because of intestinal problems that are caused by this same kind of cycle. And then metabolic syndrome and obesity. In other words, the excessive weight that we see in the world when we go just to Walmart. It's evident. This is the damage this is doing to the country. And so those are the bad things about high glycemic load insulin, and it's just the tip of the iceberg. But you get the picture and you see what's happening to you by this cycle as you go forward. Now, but high glycemic load foods, the starches and sugars, basically, and sweet drinks, that's what those are. So now there's other kinds of foods than carbs that we use for energy. They are fats and proteins. So we need to talk a little bit about fats and protein and the slow or slower carbohydrates that do not do this to you. I mean, this is what I call high glycemic hell to the body. It does that much damage in so many ways. So this is a terrible place for you to be. This is, thank the Lord, the majority of all foods on earth are below the high glycemic load because it takes longer to digest it, longer to chew it up usually also. And so it has a different effect. And there's so many foods in here. Now let me address diets right here, because this is a good point for the type of cuisine that Rose cooks. Now we are on maintenance, and many of you have guessed that you can also diet using low glycemic food cuisine, and that is true. You just have to be a little stricter than we are, because we are on maintenance. We lost 50 pounds apiece and have never gained it back. And everything we ever did through our whole lives, 78 years of it, we always gained it back. And why? 90% of the failures, 90% of the people go back and gain their weight back in a few months or a year or two. And so why do diets fail? It's because of two main things. They're so restrictive in how much you can eat, or they are so restrictive in the variety of foods and the variety of seasonings that you can eat, that people just literally can't stay on them. And so what happens to them? They drop back to their original eating habits. In a fire, a bad fire, a man was trying to escape on an aircraft. On his airplane. He had a small plane, and he was trying to escape. And so he got to the airport. This was a fire covering hundreds of square acres, and so he was trying to escape. And he got up in the air, and there was so much fog in the air that he couldn't see where he was going. So what did he do? He said, well, if I can't see where I'm going, I can't get to another airport, there's no place else for me to land. He went back and landed in the very airport that he took off from. And that's what happens to human beings. It always happened to Rose and I until we got on the low glycemic cuisine style of eating and cooking. So what happens, one of the biggest benefit to that allows you to have a large variety of food if you just learn a few rules about how to cook and what to cook, is that you can eat slow carbs all the time, you can eat protein all the time, and you can eat fats. And that is a very healthy mixture right there. Controlling or eating much fewer carbs that this does to you. So let's talk about the kinds of foods that are in this area of the chart now that we have already talked about these foods. Now, referring back to the airplane example that I just used, what I was trying to show with that example is that Rose's maintenance cuisine, low glycemic load cuisine, we're talking about eating in this area all kinds of variety, all kinds of food seasoned, and she's putting more and more out there for you every day. Some of it is keto. We've never tried to tell you to diet this way, but you can. Some of you have guessed that. Yes, you can, but we aren't pushing diets. But there is a diet, examples in the book, Why We Get Sick. There's also, I've shown you the book on the glycemic load diet, and there's hundreds of recipes on how to actually diet and lose weight on that. But Rose's cuisine is a maintenance diet that you cannot hardly gain weight because you're staying out of the fat producing area up here. So, and down here. So we lost our weight 2 years ago. We eat everyday delicious food, all kinds of varieties. You go back through her recipes. She's got almost 650 out there, most of which are low glycemic or keto. But I wanted to give you today some actual foods and example from the diet that we were given that started this. We did not know this was low glycemic. It doesn't say anything about low glycemic here. It does talk about staying low carb. And remember, her problem was basically a leaky gut and bad bacteria problem causing her pain every day. So this is Dr. Sedgwick's diet from the Gastrological Associates of Central Georgia in Macon, Georgia. Dr. Sedgwick. It's not how much we eat, but what and when we eat that leads to obesity. When we can look back at primitive man to see how the body was designed to eat and process food for optimal survival, their diet consisted of meat, fish, vegetables, fresh fruits, and berries. They hunted and ate during daytime to avoid being hunted themselves at night. Our bodies were made to handle protein, natural carbohydrates, and fats, but not highly processed foods, sugars, or refined carbohydrates, these starches up here. When we eat refined carbohydrates, starch, they are immediately converted to sugar and then to fat. These fats are stored in your fat cells, leading to obesity. The purpose of this diet is to eliminate the starches and the sugars without making you hungry or making you crave. For your metabolism to change, you must fill your diet with healthy foods as outlined below and stick to this diet daily. Consistency is the key to change in your general health and well-being. By implementing when and what you eat, you can help decrease risk of or symptoms related to diseases such as diabetes, stroke, cancer, heart disease, the things I talked about earlier. And this diet starts by not buying the starches and processed foods while at the grocery store, and by opening your pantry, as Rose talks about, and getting them out of that pantry so that you won't be so tempted to cook them. So now some general guidelines. He first talks about fasting, and he recommends 16 hours, like if you eat at 8 o'clock tonight, and he recommends you do this once or twice a week. You eat at 8 o'clock tonight, don't eat till 12 tomorrow. And that's not hard to do, and he recommends that twice a week. Rose and I actually, to lose our weight, never did fast at all. But it's still something that will accelerate your weight loss as differentiated from maintenance. When you fast, the body begins the process of autophagy also, which means it's throwing out old cells that are worn out, and that's healthy for you. It also helps fight your inflammation. And so now let's look, it also talks here about gut microbiology, but we're not going to really cover that. It's just good enough to say two things: that if you eat these foods instead of these foods, your good gut bacteria multiplies and your bad bacteria begins to die or be subdued because they're starving somewhat. Now, there's one other thing about your microbe health down here. If your microbes are basically bad microbes. They're the bad kind because of eating too many carbohydrates. Those microbes multiply in the intestines to the extent that they are eating everything they can find, and they also eat fiber. So whereas on most diets you think, I'm eating fiber, I'm fine. Well, if your microbes are wrong and you got the bad kind of bacteria in here in the majority, you can actually be eating 300 more calories per day on a 1,200 calorie diet because it's digesting the fiber that you think is not being digested. But so it would change a 1,200 calorie a day diet from 1,200 to 1,500, and day after day after day, look what that would do to you. Now, let's talk about some actual foods because you've been asking for this allowed, and we'll just go through the list. Foods allowed include preferable grilled, broiled, or baked meats, but occasional fried is allowed. Rose and I eat fried chicken every now and then. We eat fish more regularly, fried fish, and I love fried fish, but you can have chicken, turkey, seafood. Salads made with any vegetables or fruit. Light dressings are allowed. Olive oil and lemon juice mixed creates a simple, healthy dressing. Soups made with vegetables and or legumes, beans and lentils. Avoid cream soups. Eggs, cheese, milk, and Greek yogurt is allowed. Now, a lot of people don't think you can eat these things, but on a low glycemic load diet, you can. Cooked, baked, steamed, or broiled vegetables, beans, lentils, or chickpeas. Now, you can't just eat all that you want and overeat. You can hardly overeat on any diet and diet. So we want to make sure that you're not overeating. Eat till you're just about full, and then drink a cup of coffee and you'll be full in just a few minutes. Fruits, apples, pears, peaches, plums, berries, kiwis, citrus. Limit bananas and grapes, too much sugar. Eat a piece of fruit, apple, pear, peach, plum, and a protein, just a teaspoonful of nuts or seeds to fit in the palm, that would fit in the palm of your hand. Almond butter, cheese, boiled egg prior to all meals. So you eat that protein and fat in those nuts prior to, you eat the fruit, piece of fruit, small piece of fruit, and those nuts prior to each meal. And if you'll do that 15 to 20 minutes before your meal, it starts easing your appetite off. Think of this as your appetizer. Eating these combinations will decrease the amount of food you eat at each meal while promoting good, healthy intestinal bacteria through prebiotic effect. Your brain will begin to crave these healthy alternatives as your body adjusts. Drink only water. You may add lemon or unsweetened tea or coffee. Black rice and, what's that word, Rose? Quinoa is allowed. I always mispronounce that name. Now, what's not allowed? Pasta, potatoes, occasional sweet potato is allowed, but rice and bread and cereal, you're trying to eliminate those. Now, I'm not going to say you couldn't eat some of that once in a while, but you just don't want to be eating that on a regular basis. Grits, oatmeal unless the old-fashioned high-fiber grain, sugar drinks, that's sodas, sweetened ice or hot tea, fresh juices or canned juices with the natural sugars in it, punch, lots of milk. You don't want to over-drink milk, but milk is allowed on the diet, but not just as something to go in and drink 8 ounces several times a day. You want to eliminate candy, cake, cookies, chocolate, no artificial sweeteners. He recommends none. Now we do, and most people do, but I'm telling you, he thinks it could cause you to go back to sugar. Sodas, including diet soda. Further learning, I recommend watching the following episode on YouTube called The Skinny on Obesity. So you can look up The Skinny on Obesity, and it will back up what I've been telling you. There's 7 series, 7 episodes, yes. And so he recommends you look at that to help you understand why he's making this diet recommendation. All we know is it worked for us, and then I went to looking for why it worked for us. And Rose has dedicated her channel to trying to help others with low glycemic cuisine. Now, what's cuisine different from a diet? Well, this is a diet. You just can't eat. But what can you eat? That's what the cuisine is about. Hundreds and hundreds of dishes. And the end is not in sight. She cooks something new every day. Today, she prepared some spicy cinnamon pecans, and they are just wonderful. They're even keto. So they're just, it's as far away from this as you can get, causing you to eat fat in your body daily if you're eating a keto diet. So this is where we're going to stop for today. Going to stop with the items in our actual diet, which we have never told anybody about on the channel. And then next week, we're going to go through fats, protein, and slow carbs. And in the fats discussion, I'm going to get into good and bad fats and cholesterol right out of the book for you. So God bless you. Have a wonderful week. Thank you.